call it 15 points higher. Meantime, also some optimistic news. Suzy Welch is here. We're going to talk about it. Older Americans might have counted Gen Z out. Gen Z is counting themselves in. Gallup's latest survey revealing that 76% of Generation Z feels optimistic about their future, but only 44% feel prepared for that future. We're going to talk about the distinction in just a second. And while they may feel hopeful, adult optimism for younger generations has hit a 3-decade low. Here to break down what this all means is NYU Stern School of Business professor Suzy Welch. What is going on here? I think we all have this expectation that, you know, our kids are going to have a harder time than we had, but they feel so much better about the situation.
Yeah, when I first read about these results, I thought, well, the death of Gen Z has been greatly exaggerated, right? Because our generation, and the statistics, the Gallup poll really shows this, our generation is sort of that they're dead to us. They're over. They're entitled. They're lazy. They don't know how to work. But Gen Z is filled with hope and optimism for themselves. These numbers are very high because there's this 76% that says, I'm very optimistic about the future. 85% believe they'll achieve the goals that they set out for themselves. And meanwhile, the general population, which is us, people who are not Gen Z, say, forget it, they're never going to achieve anything.
Okay, but who's right?
Well, we shall find out. I actually believe in Gen Z. I think that they want to know how to achieve. They want to learn more. I think they want a different future than we wanted, and that might be the source of some of the frustration. When the poll asked them, what is your dream? You know, what's your American dream? They said something that's kind of, I think, a little bit startling to our generation. They said, we want to make enough money to live comfortably. Now that on its face sounds like an okay goal. I want to make enough money to live comfortably, but when their word comfortably is not about financial security, it's about anxiety. If you look deeper into the results, right? They'll do anything to avoid anxiety. They want to have lives that are anxiety-free. And that's why we saw quiet quitting, right, lazy girl jobs, fun employment, all of those trends.
And you think if this poll was taken of a generation or two back or three back, the answer would have been not just I want to be comfortable,
yes,
but I want to do better than my parents?
Yes, absolutely.
Because that to me was what I thought was the American dream.
That's right. They have a very tamped down, diminished American dream, and who's to say it's wrong? Maybe that but what we see, what the implications for business are, is that they are moving away from work and business being the source of their happiness and self-actualization and identity.
I can't say I'm shocked or surprised. I mean, they grew up with the Great Recession, followed by COVID and the pandemic and crazy lockdowns.
Yes.
And
their view of the future can be quite nihilistic.
Right. If you look at some of those things, if you grew up and watched your parents get in trouble during the Great Recession, you think, I'm not going to put myself through the things my parents did and sacrifice all those things for what? For nothing.
For the man. They don't want to do it.
Am I wrong to have more hope for Gen Z than maybe some of the other named generations? I think
no, I don't. I have a lot of hope for them because they have one really beautiful thing about them.
But they're different, aren't they? They're different,
they are different.
than the you know, hoverboard generation,
yes,
whatever the hell they live in their parents' basement.
Yeah, no, they are, at least in my classroom, my experience, and I talk to a lot of people from Gen Z, they want to work very, very, they want to have meaningful lives, okay? So that's
not just apps on their iPhone.
No, they want to, they actually like more in real life communication than previous generations. I have a lot of hope for them, actually. I know that's countercultural.
But let me ask you this. We've been talking about the UAW this morning with the auto union, and we've now seen a sort of union movement with UPS across the country. It's happening broadly.
Yeah.
How does that play into this?
I think that Gen Z would be more likely to want to be unionized than previous generations. That because they don't trust institutions, and their trust institutions all-time low, because they don't trust, they're not going to trust their boss to say...
The union's not an institution?
Well, they don't know that yet, right? They see
They're some of the worst the management at the union.
Okay, they are going to pick management as being the institution, the man, the boss, and I think they'd be more likely to unionize because they don't see work, they don't see, okay, if I unionize, it's going to hurt my upward trajectory, it's going to take me out of management, because they don't have long-term views about how long they're going to stay at a company.
I'm just curious about the kids who are in your class.
Yeah.
How entrepreneurial do you think they are relative to what you might have seen a decade ago or 2 decades ago?
So I think, I have an interesting slice because I've got very shiny, bright, MBAs. Yes. So I think they're not the typical Gen Z.
They should be a little more entrepreneurial.
They're extremely entrepreneurial. But there's two pieces of it. One is that they love the sort of entrepreneurial life, but the other part of it is they don't want to work for somebody else because somebody else then can control your your lifestyle or can introduce anxiety into your life. So part of the lure of being, and of course, having been an entrepreneur myself, nothing is more anxiety-provoking than being an entrepreneur and working for yourself because you're, you know.
Okay, so how has the curriculum then, either what you teach or your colleagues teach, changed?
Yeah.
Or changing as a function of all this?
I have to say, at least at NYU, keep up very much. There's lots of classes on entrepreneurship. I started a year ago teaching a class called Becoming You, which is about the journey of discovering what you should do with your life. And when we put it out there, we didn't know how people were going to respond. And it ended up that there was a strong desire for people in this generation to figure out who they were standing still so that they could figure out what they were going to do when they took their next step forward. We almost as a generation never looked at what we wanted while we were standing still. It was just go, go, go.
Right.
Then we sort of got to that, stage in our life where we said, what is this beautiful house? My God, what have I done? Like the Talking Heads song. And we said, wait, who am I? And had our midlife crises. They would like to have that midlife crisis.
Are you surprised that Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and Blackstone, well now Blackstone, but they wouldn't have been on this list 20 years ago, still have, thousands of applicants every year for what are effectively training jobs.
Right.
Before they, is that?
There's always going to be this group of high-achieving kids who are coming out of the top schools that are going to be feeding Goldman Sachs and Bain and McKinsey. There's always going to be that conveyor belt. But then there's the whole large group of students underneath that, of young people coming up who are having a lot of alternative versions of the future, which include a sort of a serial careers. Work, take time off. Work, take time off. Work. I never thought of it that way.
So final question.
Yeah.
As an employer, what do you think you would do about this sort of shifting wind?
Well, I think with all of Gen Z, with all employers, I think that what I first experienced was a lot of frustration coming from employers saying, how do we manage these kids? And I think they've come to learn from experience that like all other generations, they just want to be seen and heard, and you've got to engage in conversation, hear about their values. And they want to be, at least according to this Gallup research, they want to be taught how to function in the world. They feel like school has not met them there. And they, if you say to them, let me tell you how to live, they're actually quite open to it.
I would say that was the same when I was in school too.
That you didn't.
Well, you get out of college, are you really prepared to do anything? It's the stuff you do on the job. If you had a job in college, to me that was the more of the training that I took.
But didn't you didn't feel when you were in school, I want to learn how to get a job? Whereas the survey shows that Gen Z students are saying, I want school to teach me how to get a job, almost like apprenticeship, almost like very big throwback.
Right.
Probably a useful turn.
Yeah.
Suzy Welch, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That's optimistic, right? It's sort of, it's like optimistic, but not. But maybe we're measuring it the wrong way.
We wanted to tune in, turn on, and drop out.
Well,
back in the
maybe you did, Joe,
70s.
but I would say that...
Well, everybody in the 70s
But I don't think
did.
that Gen Z does not want to tune in and drop out. They don't.
That's what we talked about before we started, that we all feel that way when we're in college, and then a lot of us turn into who we become, and I'm hoping that for the millennials eventually and Gen Z.
I think that we were more willing to take on anxiety and more willing to take on the trade-offs they don't want to take.
Really?
By comparison. Yeah.
Well, life is about challenges, so there's going to be some anxiety.
I know, well...
Billie Jean King, pressure's a privilege, baby.
Yeah, that's a great line.
Thanks, Suzy. When we come back,